Samuel Barclay Beckett was born in Dublin on Good Friday, the 13th of April, 1906. After studying French and Italian in Trinity College, Beckett was taken by a wanderlust, and he travelled Europe extensively, living almost as a tramp. He moved to Paris in 1928, where he met James Joyce and went on to become his secretary, transcribing several sections of Finnegan's Wake. When Paris was invaded in 1941, Beckett joined the resistance, but his cell was exposed and he spent most of the war in hiding. Although he had been writing actively since 1930, it was not until 1952 that his reputation was made. In January of that year, Waiting for Godot was first produced. No one single fact about the phenomenal impact of the production by this as then unknown author can convey to a modern audience how significant this play was to post-war Paris, except perhaps this. The first run of the play was extended to over 300 performances. In 1969, Beckett was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. He died on the 22nd of December, 1989, having gifted the world an extraordinary canon of 19 plays, 6 novels, various poems, short prose pieces, and critical works. Beckett's wishes for his funeral were that there be no religious service and no speeches. In 1998, the artistic director of the Gate Theatre Dublin, Michael Colgan, had an idea: to commit to film all 19 of Samuel Beckett's plays, an undertaking that would eventually require over 1 year of principal photography, and the bringing together of Blue Angel Films, Tyrone Productions, the Irish Film Board, Channel 4, and the first broadcast company who supported the project, RTE.
We went ahead, even though all the finance, as I said, wasn't in place, because we recognized immediately that doing all the plays of a major Irish writer of the 20th century would be a wonderful and lasting millennium project.
There are some things that film can give you that you can't get on stage.
What are they?
Well, we didn't really know this before we went into it, but certainly we have discovered that there are certain things. I mean, you can get the context of a piece better. I think that Anthony Minghella in play, for example, has contextualized why they're in the urns, and that sense that there's a lot of people in urns and they're all just talking this, rehearsing the trivia of their lives. I think Damien O'Donnell, Charles Sturridge, when they did respectively What, Where and Ohio Impromptu, where Beckett wanted the actors to look as alike as possible by using matte shots and so forth. I say that as if I know what I'm talking about, but by using all of this technology, you can actually have the same actor playing 2 parts. So there are things that you can get, and the other thing, I suppose, is you can get close up to the face, so that if you want somebody, as in What, Where, to be terrified, or if you want to get straight into John Hurt in Krapp's Last Tape, into his face, you can't do that if you're in row F, you know?
I think from the start what I wanted to do and bring to this was, and I'm sorry, I'm probably repeating myself, but was to make this a cinematic event, and that's about directors. The camera helps this work. I think it makes it more accessible, and it will help the viewer understand what it was this man was doing, you know, and what he was writing about. I think the power of the close-up, you know, the power the camera has can actually make this work more accessible, and therefore I think, you know, an audience, a whole other audience will get this, you know, and should, and if they don't, then we shouldn't have made them, because that's the point.
Indeed, this very point was not missed by the project's critics, many of whom considered the entire business to be heresy.
There's a fundamental difference between a theatrical production and a film production. In the theatre, there is a subjective relationship with the member of the audience in the play. You are your own director. You are interpreting your own meaning. You are looking at things the way you want to see it. When you put a film camera between the audience and the play, it is the director who is deciding the meaning, who is deciding what is most important, who's deciding levels of emphasis. In other words, Beckett's work is being interpreted by film directors, which is entirely contrary because of his nature of his relationship with the audience. So now we have a situation where not only is there no audience when these plays are being filmed, but the film camera is now interpreting for the non-existent audience what's happening on the stage. Now, that can't be acceptable.
I switch on. Good.
Acceptable or not, the Beckett project attracted some of the finest actors and directors in the world to the work, and filming of the project began in December 1999 with Damien O'Donnell's What Where, which was followed in February 2000 by Conor McPherson's Endgame.
If age but new, sit on him.
I can't sit.
True, and I can't stand.
So it is.
Every man his speciality.
In the theatre, when actors speak, they have to be able to project their voice, and so they have to be able to pause in between lines, and everybody has to talk very kind of loudly, and it's artificial, and it's very difficult to make it look real. Good actors do make it look real, but what we had an opportunity with this on film was that they could talk at the level we're talking now, which I thought would give it a whole new dynamic. So I think that the dialogue in film is probably much faster than people would have ever seen it on stage.
Are you hugging? Yes. It's a lie. Why do you lie to me? There, stop.
Conversely to what a lot of people would think, I think there's an awful lot of passion in his plays. I think that Beckett, like all writers, starts with an idea probably from his own life, and but then what he was uniquely brilliant at doing was he would strip all the details out until you were just left with the final bare skeleton of the experience. So if you have, supposing I said to you, I was once in love with this girl, and you know, I really thought she was terrific, and it ended up not working out, and I sort of made a fool of myself a little bit. I used to call around her house, and it was kind of embarrassing and stuff like that. And so instead of writing a play or based on that, what Beckett would take an experience, I think, such as that, like a life experience, and pull out all the detail until you're finally left with the bare minimum. And so you just have this like stage direction, which is like, you know, the character takes 3 steps forward and shrieks, which is his, you know, representation of the experience.
Bastard. Did you get him?
What you see in his work is the way that people feel, I think, which is kind of, people often feel a little bit lonely and a bit on their own and isolated and unsure of themselves and afraid of the future and ashamed of the past. And so he managed to dig that out of himself and present it to people. And it's a huge gift that he gave. He gave his whole life. He really gave his whole life to his work. And it's a rare privilege to be able to work on such beautiful pieces of art, you know.
Well, there was rules. We were told we couldn't change the text. We had to obey the staging of it. So we were working within fairly tight restrictions. So what I had to do was just keep constantly reading the play and finding clues in it about what I could do or how I could push it. So I read it and I started having ideas. I was basically finding inspiration from inside the text and making arguments about how that works on film. For instance, the set of the library, there's no set in the original play, but I argued that this whole thing, the whole project, was about power and the abuse of power, and also how information is power. So we used the library as a metaphor for somebody who has control of all the power and all the information, and that gives them that power.
Well?
Nothing.
He didn't say anything.
No.
You gave him the works,
Yes.
and he didn't say anything.
No.
He wept,
Yes.
screamed,
Yes.
begged for mercy,
Yes.
but didn't say anything.
No.
I don't think it's about worthiness. I don't, you know, wordiness is the wrong word to use. If it works on film, then you should film it. The difference being is that, you know, Beckett didn't allow his work to be filmed before, not at this kind of, at this level. Everything's been filmed on 35mm, you know, with huge casts and huge directors, and it's an opportunity to see if his work does transfer from the stage to film. And in some cases it will, some cases it mightn't. But I think that it's certainly worth seeing if the audiences respond to it, if people learn something different about Beckett from seeing it on film as opposed to seeing it on stage, which I think is what's happened with What Where, well, then it was worth doing.
I switch off. I start again.
The standalone soliloquy is a motif of the Beckett canon. Plays such as Krapp's Last Tape, Rockabye, and A Piece of Monologue present enormous challenges to actors and directors alike. Neil Jordan has cast two-time Oscar nominee Julianne Moore in his version of Beckett's Not I.
Out into this world, tiny little thing, before its time, into God... What? Girl? Yes, tiny little girl, into this, out into this, before her time. God-forsaken hole, cold, no matter, parents unknown, unheard of, he having...
It's about a disembodied voice. Beckett just wanted to isolate a mouth on a stage, and it's about somebody who's struggling to express a sense of the trauma of being, you know, and in a way it's like a metaphor of being thrown into life, of being, you know, thrown into some kind of existence, and for some strange reason refusing to express themselves in the first person. It's like there's some deity out there that refuses to let them say I. Yeah, so they have to speak about them in themselves in the third person. So in a way it's about somebody who can only speak about themselves as something other than what they are themselves.
Sudden flash, she was being punished for her sins, a number of which then, further proof, if proof were needed, flashed through her mind, one after another, then dismissed as foolish.
The piece on stage, I mean, if you were in the Royal Court or in the Abbey, for example, the mouth would be so tiny that I'm sure there'd be a mesmeric quality in even trying to concentrate on it. The reason I thought it might make a film is basically because I decided to do just what Beckett had specified, you know, just to photograph nothing but Julianne Moore's mouth from as many possible angles as I could, you know. And when you get into a mouth, actually, inside, behind the lips and the teeth is blackness, you know what I mean? The photographic blackness, definitely, because you can't illuminate the roof of somebody's mouth, you know, unless you stick a light in there. So it is like looking into a dark tunnel in a way, you know, and it's like the lips become the kind of entry into this tunnel, which is oneself, I suppose.
First occurred to her, then dismissed as foolish, as perhaps not so foolish, after all, so on, all that, vain reasonings, till another thought, oh, long after.
The cutting is so rapid, when people watch it, they're not aware of actually it's being cut, really, in a way, you know what I mean? But it's, from my point of view, it was just an aesthetic and a practical problem, how to photograph a mouth, you know, basically. And I kind of took the point of view that Oxford Scientific do when they're trying to photograph ants and locusts and strange little beings, you know, they have to use, like, strange lenses and, you know, enormously long lenses. And so it was a bit like studying a phenomenon of natural behavior, which is the movement of somebody's mouth when they're speaking quickly. Really.
Ah! Then listen. Scream again. Ah! Then listen again. No, spared that. All silent as a grave.
A director's choice of shot is a director's choice of interpretation, is a director's choice of meaning. A shot this size means one thing. If you shoot me this size and I'd say, good morning, I am the postman, it means one thing. If you shoot me that size and say, good morning, I am the postman, it means something else. If you shoot me this size or you shoot me wiser. All of those pictures, all of those images create other meaning. Every intrinsic part of shooting film is about interpretation and meaning, and it's an imposition on the Beckett performance.
Well, I mean, the only bad thing about Beckett is the commentators on him. You know, that's what I find. I mean, the most irritating thing about his whole work and his whole canon is those who seem to love him. They can be such tiresome bores, you know, and they all seem to feel they have a key, you know, to a body of work that is understood by only them and perhaps one or two other people, you know what I mean? And I mean, that's the, you know, every writer brings something good to the world and also often brings a lot of rubbish in their wake. You know what I mean? That's the kind of rubbish Beckett brings with him, I think, is this kind of strange reverence, you know. But it's... I mean, I generally write my own stuff. I've never had to work with a piece of writing on film that was of such dense texture ever, you know. And there is an impenetrability to it, you know what I mean, that remains no matter how far you try it, how far you stretch it, how far you look into it, you know what I mean. But for me as a director, it was brilliant to work with something that was about the kind of ideas that you never are allowed to encounter in commercial cinema, you know. So it was delightful.
Stand up, woman. Speak up, woman. Stood there staring into space, mouth half open as usual, waiting to be led away, glad of the hand on her arm. Now this, something she had to tell. Could that be it? Something that would tell how it was, how she, what, had been? Yes, something that would tell how it had been, how she had lived on and on, guilty or not, on and on, to be 60. Something she, what, 70? Good God.
Growing up, Beckett loved to walk the hills of Wicklow, and Ardmore Studios, situated in the same county, now finds Oscar nominee 𝙁𝙾𝙲𝚗𝙯 directing John Hurt in Krapp's Last Tape, a work described by some as the most perfect play of the 20th century.
Went to Vespers once. Like when I was in short trousers. Went to sleep and fell off the pew.
This is, you know, a play in which you have an old man listening to a recording of himself, commenting on a recording he made at the age of, you know, in his 20s. And so you have these three different generations within one life that are interacting with each other. So it's deceptively simple. And the more you investigate and try and understand the text, you know, the more it reveals. And I think that, like any great, you know, work of art, it seems at one level to be very simple, but it keeps revealing itself.
Here I end the...
And at one point, there's even a shot where, you know, the camera's dollying along as he's listening to the recording, and then he stops and it's rewound, and the camera sort of moves back. And then when he puts it forward, I mean, it sounds really obvious, but I think it's sort of a very subtle moment and an example of how the camera can kind of contain another spirit. And since this is so much about a man interacting with a spirit that's recorded on tape, the camera can almost become a character and can interact.
We don't have a lot of time, but I don't know, sometimes that pays off. You know, if you're under pressure and you've got 3 days in order to put an hour on screen and make a film rather than just a film version of the play, because it was, I mean, we very much tried to do that. And Atoms tried, and I think probably very successfully to do so. And I think it'll be a very elegant film. Nothing to say! Squeak! It's a common misconception that Beckett is a gloomy old bugger, that you know, that is negative and makes one despondent and so on, and depressed. I don't think that's the case at all. What he does so brilliantly is to take a universal understanding of a character and make it into a character that seems to be parochial, but isn't. And it's the great trick, that, because it is therefore understandable to anybody. Just been listening to that stupid bastard I took myself for 30 years ago.
He has taken certain ideas as far as you can go, you know. He has sort of gone, you know, to the abyss, you know, and I think that where people might feel, you know, that he's not approachable is because they don't want to go to that place, and it's a difficult place to go to, but it's where I think, you know, great drama takes us.
Jesus, take his mind off his homework. Jesus! I cannot tell you how many people identify with Krapp, which really surprised me. That did surprise me. I thought people might find that difficult. I think they might sympathise on a certain, you know, sympathise on a certain. I didn't realise they were going to empathise, which is quite a different thing. You can't help feeling that there's an autobiographical feeling about it. And you can't, I couldn't help feeling when I was working on it that Beckett was, in a sense, was saying, here but for the grace of God. Why? You know, I mean, because if he hadn't been picked up by the literati, it is quite possible that he would have found himself having chosen a pretty ascetic kind of stance on life. He didn't exactly throw away love, but in the way that Krapp did. But then, you know, that is the dramatic thesis in a sense.
17 copies sold, of which 11 at trade price to free circulating libraries beyond the seas. Getting known!
Most famous for its association with James Bond movies, Pinewood Studios London seems an incongruous location for Beckett's play. Directed by Oscar winner Anthony Minghella, and with Alan Rickman, Juliet Stevenson and Kirsten Scott Thomas in the pots. Play is centred around a ladies' man of quite another hue, one who was forced to live with the consequences of his actions.
I went to university in 1972 and discovered Beckett the second I arrived there, really. The next 4 or 5 years of my life were sort of defined by that discovery in some ways. I became obsessed with the writing, the manner of the writing, with the life, with the romance, really, of it's, you know, the mixture of austerity and romance, which I think is at the heart of him. It's like Bach for me, you know, the two big discoveries of my young adulthood were Bach and Beckett. And cut. Good. Now, one more. Now, the great thing about movies is that the method of constructing film is by repetition, is by takes. It's by taking an element and doing it again and again and again until you've got it right, which is in a sense what these characters are doing. They're in urns trying to do it again and again and again until they think they've got it right and they can move on. And so there might be a way on film of suggesting multiple occasions of the text without there being more than 2 repetitions, if you understand what I mean. It means that you can actually, in the interior of the text, by breaking the text up into various takes, it becomes palimpsestic, so that each version is filmed over the other one. So I'm hoping that the experience of watching the film will not just be a sense of the text twice, but of 1,000 times of the text.
I had him dogged for months by a first-rate man. No shadow of proof was forthcoming. There was no denying that he continued as assiduous as ever. This and his horror of the merely platonic thing made me sometimes wonder if I were not accusing him unjustly. Yes.
What have you to complain of? I said, have I been neglected? I have a letter that was given to me by a friend who knew Samuel Beckett, and he wrote to her about having attended some rehearsals, or a copy of the letter. And he'd been to some rehearsals. He wasn't that happy because he said, in the letter, he said, I don't suppose they'll ever get the voice right. He said it should have an ashen, abstract quality, and those are his words after the hours it takes to decipher the handwriting. But ashen and abstract, I suppose, are 2 qualities that are very difficult to produce on stage because they'd be inaudible. And so in many ways, that's why I think it's great that these works are being put on film, and I'm sure actually Beckett would agree and be happy too, because he's getting a vocal quality, hopefully, that's the one that's in his head. I get the impression that sometimes theatre frustrated him as much as it excited him, because as he became kind of purer and purer and purer, it's almost like an installation or performance art or something.
If you were to play W2 on stage, how would the performance differ from the one you're giving on screen today?
If I was playing it on stage, well, I don't know. I haven't thought about that at all. I think it would possibly be quite a lot more difficult. I think there might be an advantage in having the beam of light, the sort of theatrical idea that you couldn't do on screen, but the notion of a beam of light, a single spot, kind of scorching across the stage and picking people out. I think that would help with a sense of these sort of souls who are dormant in their urns but are woken up by this interrogating creature. But all the problems that you encounter as an actor are problems which the characters are encountering. They are sick to death of being in those pots. They are probably exhausted, longing for it to stop. So everything you can use. In fact, by the end of yesterday, I was very, very tired, and I think some of the best work happened then. Fearing she was about to offer me violence, I rang for 𝙁𝙾𝙲𝚄𝙼𝙀 and had her shown out her parting words as he could testify if he is still living and has not forgotten, coming and going on the earth, letting people in, showing people out, what had the effect that she would settle my hash. I confess it did alarm me a little at the time.
Great writing. It's not meant to be a palliative. This was happening to the world what we live in. More and more palliatives, shorter and shorter attention spans, and the tragedy is, of course, that we're going to have a culture that's less and less able to respond to Beckett or Shakespeare or whatever at all, because they won't have a way in. They won't know that you actually have to do a bit of work as a member of the audience, and you've got to make a gift of yourself in the audience to the piece of work. It's not going to just come and stroke you.
There's a certain amount of truth in the fact that his writing is a cul-de-sac in some ways. It doesn't, it annihilates theatre, it annihilates the novel, it annihilates fiction. It's a sort of dialectical writing. It's sort of fighting fiction all the time, fighting the shape of fiction, aspiring to science, aspiring to maths, aspiring to anything other than the art of fiction. By the same token, in its annihilation of it, there's also an enormous sanctifying of it. There's an enormous endorsing of it. And so I would say that in terms of simple, the map that he was making, I think it takes you nowhere. But the rigor with which he made the map, the beauty of the map, is incredibly important. So, you're asking a disciple. I have to say that the most important dramatist of the 20th century.
Mere eye, no mind, opening and shutting on me. Am I as much as being seen?
Beckett's work is full of really strong images. I actually think he's a very cinematic writer. People tend to remember the images in the plays. They tend to remember the people in the sacks, or the people in the dustbins, or the woman buried up to her neck in sand, or the mouth on stage. And sometimes they mix up which play is which, but those images really stay in people's heads, and that's the very essence of cinematic writing. I think in Act Without Words too, there's a great humour in the piece, not contained within the two mind routines really that the characters do, because that's basically, as I said, the mechanical rituals of daily life, but it's almost a humour in collusion with the audience, or it's kind of Beckett's in-joke with the audience, which I think is present in a lot of his work, whereby at some point, perhaps when you're watching the piece, you think to yourself, why am I sitting watching this? And then you realise, oh, hang on a sec, that's what this is all about. And in fact, in Act Without Words too, just as you've had, probably all you can take, and it looks like the thing's going to start all over again because these guys are kind of caught in a trap, Beckett, with impeccable comic timing, pulls the plug, and in the script he drops the curtain, or in the case of the film, he switches the projector off. And spurs us from having to watch it again. The work's amazing. I mean, his work has been so influential. In academic circles, he's the second most written about person ever. That's a fact I came across, second only to Wagner. And that's pretty amazing when you consider he's only dead, 12 years?
The American playwright and director David Mamet has chosen London's Old Wilton Music Hall as his setting for Beckett's short Catastrophe. Because of the intimate nature of the piece, he requested that there be a closed set.
I'm sorry, I forgot to say go that time.
While filming continued in the main body of the hall, an interview area was set up in anticipation of Mr. Mamet's arrival. But unfortunately, he simply had no time to spare at the end of the day. Regrettably, cast member Harold Pinter also became unavailable at the day's end.
Luke! Luke! I hear you!
Because of Mamet's edict, these pictures of Sir John Gielgud, who sadly died just weeks later, had to be filmed covertly from a balcony overlooking the set. Gielgud, who once described Godot as a load of old rubbish, belonged to a school which accepted that theatre existed for moments that happened before our eyes just once, moments that can never happen again. His final role at the age of 96 was that of a mute actor, captured forever by the Beckett Project.
Terrific. He'll have them on their feet. I can hear it from here.
After a brief hiatus, production resumed in June. Old collaborators Jeremy Irons and Charles Sturridge have come together again on one of Beckett's later works, Ohio Impromptu.
I felt there wasn't much point in making a film of a Beckett play unless you use the medium you're in to extend the ideas of the play. And this particular play, Ohio Impromptu, describes two characters who the author wishes to be as alike as possible. Now, obviously, on the stage, you do your best. You get two actors who look vaguely alike. Because I'm shooting on film, I can have completely alike, that's as alike as possible, and obviously have, in this instance, the same actor, Jeremy Irons, playing both parts.
It's very technical. It's quite a different process to Dead Ringers, where I did it before, because I was playing two people. I'm now playing two parts of one person, if you like, the intellect and the heart, as they come together in a time of grief, face up to loss. I do crosswords, you know, and you're looking for clues, you're looking for the right word in the case of a crossword, but in the case of a Beckett play, you're trying to find out from the signs that he wrote, the signals that he wrote, the instructions and the dialogue, or the monologue, what it is he was trying to put across. So that's really what I'm doing, struggling to do along with the director.
Do you think it's, as he's got no other alternative shades to comfort him, should it not be my shade, or my ghost, or
my shade will comfort you,
as opposed to mine, as opposed to somebody else's shade, which is like that.
The shade of my... You're right, it should be shade.
My shade will comfort you.
Do you think that there's anything essential in theatre that can't be transferred onto film?
Yes, the fact that it's happening then can't be transferred. The fact that you're sitting with an audience who are seeing that performance only that time, that night, that can't be transferred. I don't see why Beckett can't work as well on film as on stage.
From this he had once half hoped some measure of relief might flow.
What is perhaps almost novelistic in a sense about a Beckett play is that it's so clear what he wants to achieve. More conventionally, one might say that the novelist, expounds exactly what the character looks like. To some extent, how the character is going to say the lines and whatever, and fills the whole world and the reader responds to that up to a point. Whereas often the playwright leaves space for the actor to elaborate, invent, embroider to some extent, in a good sense. I don't mean that's a crime, but it's very clear that Beckett didn't want that to happen, and that he was being not pedantic, but absolutely perfectly clear. It's a kind of crystalline process. In one's imagination, one tends to think this means it's going to be austere. And actually, what's extraordinary is that it is reverberative. It creates a bigger feeling than the thin line of prose or action that it purports to be. It creates a huge sort of vibrating wave that comes out into the audience. And that has been, I think, the single most extraordinary thing about working on this piece, that the power of this tiny, short, 8-minute piece of text.
The volcanic wastes of the interior of Tenerife are where Patricia Rozema has located her version of Samuel Beckett's Happy Days.
Old eyes. On, Winnie. Yoo-hoo! Willie! Marvellous gift. Wish I had it. Oh. Thank you, dear.
Beckett would never have attempted to answer a question like, what's it really about? And I don't presume to kind of encapsulate it in some kind of little slogan. It's such a rich metaphor, and it bears reinterpretation constantly, like all great works.
Oh, I know it does not follow when two are gathered together in this way, that because one sees the other, that the other sees the one. Life has taught me that, too. Yes.
𝙁𝙾𝙲𝚄𝙼𝙴𝙽𝚃𝙰 gives, I think, a spectacular performance. Everything we did together was to work to make it completely naturalistic. It could be delivered in a fairly stagey, projected, kind of delivered on a platter kind of way, but we did everything to make it just chatter to herself, to Willie, but never to an audience. And she has the most precise nuance and kind of delicate presentation. It was, I mean, I have to sort of give a lot of credit to Carl Rice, who worked with her for her stage production. So she was so prepared. That's the only way we could have achieved it in that short amount of time.
Remember Brownie, Willie? Remember how you used to keep on at me to take it away from you? Take it away, Winnie, take it away. Before I put myself out of my misery.
I think he loved humanity. I think he despaired at its demise, but and its kind of inevitable decay. But I think there's something there's something to be learned, not in a easy, typical TV way, but there's much to be gained. It washes over you. You don't you can't pick it apart and say, oh yeah, well this was about that, and that character represents that, and that character. You just can't. You can try, and people do, and have different interpretations, but it's dense and rich and has many subtle flavors and colors.
Difficulties here for the mind. To have been always what I am, and so changed from what I was. I'm the one. I say the one, then the other. Now the one, then the other. There is so little one can say. One says it all one can. And no truth in it anywhere.
I love if the gesture and the moment is precise and contains all that energy. It's there forever, and now it is there forever. And I think that pressure actually creates a kind of tension around the moment that in fact enlivens the moment. So if you want to spend time with a great spirit, watch Happy Days.
Oh, this is a happy day. This would have been another happy day. After all, so far.
Coming up to Christmas, the project has taken over a turkey warehouse in County Monaghan, which has been transformed into a film set by Charles Garrod. The set itself is probably one of the most famous in theatre: a tree, a mound, a road. It is, of course, the set of Waiting for Godot.
Okay.
At last.
We've made a more realistic set because the original Gate production had a very minimal set with just a rock and a tree and lighting. But that wouldn't work for a 2-hour movie.
Stop. Turn.
We've also, with the actors, toned down some of the performances a little bit because the kind of thing an actor needs to do on stage is different than on film, because film is, of course, a more intimate medium. So we've done a lot, but keeping the play intact. Okay, Kieran, you ready? Seamus, you ready? And action. I think if Samuel Beckett were to give the answer, and it's presumptuous of me to speak for him, I think he'd say it's about 2 people waiting on the side of the road for someone to turn up. And then the audience, to do with the cut of their mind, would invest in who's going to turn up. Is it just some local human? Is it God? Is it salvation? Who is it? Is it safety, security, whatever? But I think one of the things about Beckett's plays, especially this one, is the ambiguous sense. And that's why they're great for an audience to be part of, because they fill in the gaps.
What do we do now?
I don't know.
Let's go.
We can't.
Why not?
We're waiting for Godot. Oh, yes.
Vivian Mercier once said, nothing happens. Godot's a play where nothing happens twice. But of course, he was being tongue-in-cheek. In a sense, nothing happens twice. But how it happens is the important thing. And it happens beautifully twice.
So why is he called Lucky? Because he has a job?
Because he has no more expectations.
There's no more expectations.
That's official.
The Rolling Stones had a great song called No Expectations also.
Peter O'Toole said he was called Lucky because he had nothing to say in the second act.
It's a scandal!
Are you alluding to anything in particular?
To treat a man like that, I think that, no, a human being, no, it's a scandal.
Beckett wrote the play at the end of the 40s, after the Second World War, after the Holocaust, and at a time when all the certainties of the previous century were not certain anymore, to do with religion, to do with belief in God, to do with any kind of salvation or safety. And Beckett takes a rather bleak or tragic view of mankind's destiny, what's going to happen to us all in physical and corporal terms. But having said that, which sounds like the downer of all time, you know, bleakness and tragedy, it's, I think, the funniest play written in the last century. Funny, not only witty, because of his very fine use of words, but funny like in a vaudevillian sense. I mean, it's got pratfalls as well as high wit, as well as comedy. And so his view of life has got this delicious top surface, which is incredibly enjoyable, I think, for an audience to watch.
You know, the first time Waiting for Godot went to be played in America, they got Burt Lahr to do it. Now, Burt Lahr was the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz, and he was one of America's great vaudeville stars.
Beckett was very much into slapstick comedy. He loved Buster Keaton, and he loved Charlie Chaplin and those films, and you can see the influence of those films on his plays.
The ideal performer for Beckett would be, well, he himself, for instance, loved Buster Keaton, and I've already talked about Burt Lahr, another sort of vaudeville great, and he loved clowns. You know, he loved performers who could be stupid, believably stupid.
It's a pity we haven't got a bit of rope. Come on, it's cold.
Camus said the first choice of the thinking person is whether they commit suicide or not. But, you know, you have blandishments and seductions in life, which are relationships and tobacco, alcohol, the mall, whatever gets you through the night, you know. I mean, also, you know, that is not a totally dissimilar view of the world from Samuel Beckett as John Lennon's, whatever gets you through the night. And I think John had a fairly clear view of what life was. You know that song, you know, Help, I Need Somebody, not just anybody.
Help! We've arrived.
Who are you?
We are men.
Oh, sweet Mother Earth.
Do you know that window? That window.
It's December 2000, and a year of production has come and gone. The final play to be filmed is Beckett's rarely produced short, Come and Go.
I don't think there's anything impenetrable about Beckett as a writer. I think he wrote about life exactly as it was, and with incredible clarity and vision. But somehow it's been mystified in the meantime.
I think there isn't a spare comma in this play, as there isn't in any of Beckett's plays. I mean, working on it is extraordinary because it's enormous, the play, and when you actually begin to look at it and work on it after a while, you begin to see that there, you know, anything extra that would be written up would be purely decorative. He just stripped everything away and gives you all that you need with absolute economy. It's phenomenal.
Oh! Does she not know? Please, God, not.
I think it captures brilliantly the nature of friendship and the nature of old friends. And I think it captures wonderfully the nature of memory, the way in which people can project themselves back into childhood memories, and the way in which childhood memories can take on a feeling of a warm glow, and remember what it felt like before life wiped the smile off their face.
The shoot is scheduled to last for 1 day only, meaning that if things go according to plan, today is also the last day of principal photography on the entire Beckett project.
Cut.
Happy, John?
Yeah.
That's a wrap, everybody. Thank you very much.
At one level, it feels like getting out of jail. And there is a sense of release, which will be dealt with probably 8 pints of Guinness. And I'm delighted that we've got here. But there's also a great sense of achievement, you know, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that it's difficult to sort of articulate, but, you know, I think what we've done is, at one level, extraordinary. And I'm very, very proud of it. I'm very proud of what we've done. I think that these are important films. I think the fact that we've made all 19 of them is very important. And, you know, I hope the general public agree, but I think it will stand the test of time.
If this project turns more people on to Beckett, then it can't be heresy. And the thing about greatness, if you think about it, whether it's Shakespeare or whoever it is that they will survive interpretation, and they will survive a great deal of productions. And when people say it's heresy, it's as if they're trying to protect Beckett, you know, and he doesn't need that protection.
It'll cost short of £5 million, which for 11 hours is, I think, remarkably cheap. Is there a profit? I don't know. It depends if people go and see it, and depends if people buy the video and do that kind of thing. I mean, you know, I think it's sort of a labour of love in a way. It's about doing something that is, I think, probably important, and I think a bit special, and I think that's the reason everybody did it.
This theatre and film, they're not precise media, you know. You are so dependent. Once you make a decision on who the actor is, you're stuck with that actor, and once you make a decision on the director, and you know, it can never be perfect, but you do, you know, ever tried, ever failed. No matter, try again, fail better.
Thank you, Mike.
Hope the quote is right.
Over the course of the past year, all of the project's actors and all of the directors spoke about what they admired most in the work of Samuel Beckett, namely, its purity, its economy, and its truth. Therefore, if his reputation for being obscure is in fact justified, surely that says more about the way in which so-called popular culture is consumed than it does about the Beckett canon. For that very reason, perhaps the ultimate achievement of the project will not be that it changed the work, but that by changing the medium, we have a new way in to a body of work which always belonged to us, the audience.
I don't think of these as being a series of possessory films. I don't think I want to see Neil Jordan's film or 𝙁𝙾𝙲𝚗𝙼's film. I think I'd love to see Not I, I'd love to see Krapp's Last Tape, because I think that the apostrophe in this season is Beckett apostrophe S and not Neil Jordan apostrophe S.
I worked with Peter Brook a few moons ago at Stratford, and he came back after he'd put the production on to see us, and he was going around talking to the actors about how it was going, how they felt, what were the problems, and he came to talk to us all afterwards as a group. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Talked to us all as a group, and so there were. He said it always amazes me when I go back to see a production and actors have say, "Oh, this isn't working, and that's not working, and this is difficult, and that's getting worse." And he said, "The thing is, what you forget," and this was Antony and Cleopatra. He said, "What everybody forgets is, however good you are, you'll never be as good as the players." And it's true. We're limited little souls, and we can only kind of throw ourselves against the wall and hope to stick a bit.
I think in 20 and 30 years' time, Endgame will be set in abattoirs, Happy Days will be set in hairdressing salons. People will cut Godot, and it'll be loose. But I would prefer that to be happening at a time when there just wasn't memory of the films, but there was memory, there was actually hard evidence. So I'm pleased we did it. 18 missed calls. I'll turn it off.